remember, because I vaguely remember, but not all the details. But certainly day one was interesting because Dad came home and said, listen, there's a problem. And looking around the room here, not everybody will actually even know what a checkbook is. But Dad said, listen, there's a problem. The check I wrote out this morning has bounced. And for those of you who don't know what it means, they weren't rubber checks. What it really meant, there was no funds sitting in the account to honor the check. And the following morning, it was a case of phone calls. There were no cell phones back then. It was party lines and all sorts of bits and pieces to say, listen, guys, I need some help. Come to Mortimer Motors tomorrow morning. I've got a job to do. And 5 or 6 mates rocked up. And the trip was escort to Pietermaritzburg. And the goal was simple. Let's liquidate every car. I do get a little bit emotional. Let's liquidate every car there is to honor the check. That's where it started. You asked earlier, why do I need a beer? He's just busy telling me it was a 3,300 Rand check. So yes, a couple of mates pitched up, the long trip down to Maritzburg, no McDonald's in the day. There was a golden egg, but I don't think it was money for the golden egg. And that check was honored. They gave you a second chance if you knew the bank manager back then. It's kind of like that debit that reruns tomorrow if it doesn't go through tonight nowadays. And from there, the story started to grow. And, Mortimer started, and people often say, what does Mortimer mean? Well, that was a guy called Jeff Mortimer, who was the son of Jeff Sr. And Jeff Mortimer was a famous racing driver, and his dad named the dealership after him back in the 1970s. And Jeff is still alive, incidentally. He's in his 80s, and he pops in every now and again just to see how things are going. And obviously with the Mortimer name being known because of racing, and back then you read newspapers and so on and so forth, the name carried as Mortimer Motors for many, many years. I remember giving a speech at Dad's 50th, saying how proud I was with his dealership. That would have been in 1997, if I can recall, 1998. There was a single outlet. In 98, things started to develop, and Hallmark, many of you know who Hallmark are and where they fit in. A chap by the name of Peter Azzi called Dad up and said, listen, I need a bit of help. I've got this branch in Ladysmith I've taken over from the Bolton family, and we're in trouble. We're losing 200,000 Rand a month in Ladysmith, and would you be interested in buying this dealership? And Dad said, listen, if you're losing 200,000 Rand a month, there really isn't much to buy. But tell you what, why don't we make up a JV? You take roughly a third of the shares, I'll keep 2/3 of the shares, and that's how that partnership started back in 1998. Shortly thereafter, Newcastle came on board. And then in 2000, Harry Smith was the first acquisition outside of the Hallmark stable, if I can call it that. Roughly 2003, I joined the group because it was a massive organization and Dad needed some help. 2005, Bethlehem came on board. 2011 was Vescus, and I can keep going from that point of view. But to put things into context, if you go back to the 31st of January 2014, that's sort of 12 years ago, not that long ago, the Mortimer Motor Group consisted of 7 Toyota dealers. That was us. All the growth has really happened in the last 12 years. Starting off in Newcastle with Ford, Mazda came along with it. Shortly thereafter was Mahindra. And I can go through the expansion, but sitting around the room tonight is representatives from 33 dealerships across numerous brands and franchises of a company that's really grown organically, looking after its people. The brief history, as I'm putting on the table, has taken a lot of hard work. There's been a lot of learning, a lot of adaptation as we've gone along. But certainly when I look across here, I'm very proud of what we've become and where we've come from and what this organization actually stands for. I often say to Louise and Samantha, you've got to look at the people, and we've got to be the chosen employer of choice. That's the end goal. People must want to work for MMG. Yes, every now and again we make mistakes and we don't necessarily get things right, but I certainly think we're a long way down that road to becoming the employer of choice in the towns that we actually operate. So folks, tonight is really about relaxing. I said to Mo earlier, there's no rights and wrongs. We're going to simply have some fun, recognize the people that we need to, and obviously along the way get to know each other a little bit better, which I think is very, very important. We haven't had an awards evening since around about 2009, which was actually a lunch. And with that, we're recognizing, and you'll see on the screen a little bit later, some of the folk who aren't here tonight who actually have worked tirelessly in the background for companies that we've bought up. But tonight, here around the table sitting next to your colleagues, it's MMG and Long Service Awards. But we felt it's important to acknowledge and actually recognize the bigger picture from that point of view. Folks, thanks very much. I really am looking forward to a little bit of fun for the rest of it, and we move on from there.